Hey, all right. Thanks for joining us here. We're back on the Gill Athletics Track and Field Connections podcast. I'm super excited. I'm going to jump right in. Help me welcome from Hartford High School in beautiful, cold. I don't know. It's June, July time, so hopefully it's at least warm. Vermont, Hartford High School. Help me welcome Miss Fatimah Shabazz. Fatimah, how are you?
I'm great, Mike. How are you doing today?
Uh, in Vermont, I think it's always 0 degrees. So I feel like I'm doing better than you, but what is it really? Let's dispel some myths here. What is the temperature right now?
I would have to look on my phone. So my laptop, it's 80 degrees, which is
Oh,
shocking. We've had a few 80-degree days so far, but it will not stay consistent until about 2 more weeks. We have had some cold ones. It's been rainy, but it's actually 80 today.
so when it dips down right now in the June, July timeframe, how far does it dip though?
Um, I would say I want to say about last week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, it was about 50 degrees.
Oh, okay, that's pretty
So
cold in June.
not too
Yeah,
bad, yeah.
yeah.
And it actually felt amazing. And that's scary because that means I've adjusted to the weather here.
Yeah, that can be scary. I get it. I was just in Austin, Texas for 10 days and then flew to Eugene, Oregon. And in Texas, it was like 100, 110. And then I flew
Right.
to Eugene and it was like 60. And I mean, that variable degree, it was like 60 is not that cold. You're right, in the scheme of things. But it was cold after spending a week in 100 plus
Yeah, I
degrees, that's
bet.
for sure. Yeah. Well, that's enough of me and my travels, Fatima. I'd love to learn more about you. Again, so thankful. We get into a crunch sometimes as we do this show weekly. We want to weekly be able to give you, present to you a new coach from around the country. And sometimes because of my travel schedule, oh, and by the way, your travel schedule, coaches, we get into a little bit of a time crunch. So I'm just so thankful here. Fatima stepped up to the plate. I made a plea, a 911 SOS, help me out. I need someone tomorrow. And just so thankful for you, Fatima, that you're able to not only be willing to step up, but had the time to spend with us here today. I'm just so grateful for you.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome.
I'm a pretty frequent listener to the podcast, so I'm
Cool.
happy to get a chance to join you.
So, okay, I always like when someone says that, I like to put them on the spot here a little bit. What has been your favorite episode that you've listened to?
I have two. I really enjoyed, and maybe I'm biased, but I really enjoyed listening to Kaba, that's at Harvard, Coach
Mhm.
Kaba. And I'm pretty sure Althea Thomas has come on, right? Yeah, those are my two. I
Mhm.
didn't want to mix it up because I know I've listened to both of those coaches on different podcasts, but those are my favorite. I think Coach Cable was like pretty early, like probably like in the 50s or something,
Boy,
somewhere along that line.
I'm going to
Yeah.
name you officially the Gill Track and Field Connection historian. That's exactly right. Kaba was one of the first. I'm going to say 5, 6, 7, right around there. We actually, when I first started this back in January of 2020, was in Boston for a meet and for some meetings and things like that. And so
Right.
we actually got 3: Mark Mangiacotti, Brenner Abbott, and Kaba, all at
Wow.
Harvard, kind of in the same day. Like I went to one office and then I went to another. And
Amazing.
Kaba, yeah, Kaba, what an amazing background he has and was going so well. And then he had a meeting. So we actually had to cut it short, but we got him to come back and do like a part 2. We picked up right where we left off. And I think that
Wow.
was around 70 or 80 or maybe 100. But you
Yeah,
named
that's the one I
2.
listened to. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You named 2 great. I mean, first of all, Kaba, love him to death. Come on.
Right.
In fact, I just ran into Brenner Abbott from Harvard in the airport coming home from Nike. They were getting
Mhm.
ready to head over to England. They do some kind of Oxford Ivy League competition. It's really unique. It's really special. And then Althea Thomas, who I've known since she was an
Yeah.
athlete. What
Yeah.
a leader. What a personality.
Amazing.
Amazing. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I'm glad you appreciate you listening, and you picked up 2 great ones. And if you're listening and you've not listened to either of those, go
Yeah.
back to the back
Go in
catalog.
the archives.
They are in there. That's right. That's right. The historian has deemed it for you to go back into the archive. That's exactly right. You're listening to number 200 and something, so that means there are 200 and something past. And I don't necessarily expect you to go from number 1 all the way through. Although I do know of at least one person that's doing that. What they messaged me the other day, they're on 125 or something like that, and I was like, man. bless you, because these are long podcasts here.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Okay, Fatimah. So again, appreciate you listening, appreciate you being here. Let's kind of jump into our Wayback Machine here. Coaching at some point, assuming you were an athlete, had to switch for you in your mind, in your brain. It had to go from something that was done to you, hey, go run this, lift this, throw this,
Mhm.
to like, oh, wait a minute, like maybe I could be a coach. Where does coaching begin for you?
Coaching actually started in two different aspects of my life. My senior year of high school and my senior year of college. Senior year of high school had like a little mini little league 5-year-old team. My brother, he constantly runs like nonprofits that are geared towards, students having a chance or kids having a chance to participate in athletics. And it started off as just me showing up and going along with them to help them out one day. And I ended up one day we were driving home after a practice and he was like, I'm a coach short. Would you like to help me this season? And I thought about it and I was like, sure. So my first team was like a little 5 through 6 year old team, first timers, first team sport. I got a chance to run up and down the court with them and it was amazing. I didn't know then that I wanted to coach. I didn't do it the next year because I actually went off to college, but it was a great experience and it's something that I always remember, just like trying to just figure it out, having a great support system, but just figuring out how I wanted to like run my practices and, giving like good equal playing time and also dealing with the emotions of 5 and 6 year olds on the basketball court. So it was a good time. And then my senior year of college, my senior athletic season, actually more so, I I think most athletes more than likely experience this, especially if they're not really gearing to go pro in the sport. I just found myself in a place where, I'm looking at the schedule like, oh my gosh, this will be my last Morehouse relays. Oh my gosh, this will be my last time going to this meet. And I was really sad about it. And I started talking with my coach a little bit about it and just having a conversation of what that felt like. And I really thought no more about it. But then as I got deeper into my season as a student athlete, there were some parts of my season where I would finish my race and I would think like, well, maybe I could have done something different or maybe this could have happened. So I started really talking to my coach at that time, my event coach, about like, hey, last season we did this, but we haven't done this in a while, or I feel like I need a little more of this. And my coach at that time, Marcus Broussard, he always listened and responded to like what my needs were as a student athlete. And like I could show up to practice the next Monday and what I asked for was on the menu or at some point that week. Or he would tell me, well, I understand why you want to do this, but we're not going to actually do this. It's a little too late in the season, or we'll work that in. So like that was my first opportunity to really have a voice in what I was doing on the track and, how it felt and how my body was responding. And then the following year, my head coach at my university actually, go ahead.
Pause there, because there's two interesting aspects there. Go back to that high school experience. Typically when we go into coaching, even if it's I'm going to call it volunteer, you're in high school still, so you're not getting paid, right? Opportunity. We typically fall back to how we were coached. I mean, that's
Right.
representation matters, right? So we see how someone did it to us, and either we like that and felt good about it, so we would emulate that, or we didn't like that, and so we would maybe try to do the opposite. When you were working, and God bless you for working with 5 and 6 year olds. Oh my goodness. I have two kids of my own, a middle schooler and fourth grader. And anytime they're in sports, I just can't coach young kids. I guess I found out I actually can't coach older kids either. But I'm just so thankful that there is someone who can. So after every practice and competitions, I always go up and say thank you, like because I can't. So thank you for
Being sincere about it.
yeah. It's like, man, if you weren't doing this, no one, because I am not stepping in here. But I'm curious with those young kids, who did you have someone on the high school level that like you emulated, or from that side of things, like you didn't just go out there and say, okay, I'm just going to make things up. You had to be some kind of representation there. You're
I
smiling.
had
Yeah.
I know because I'm thinking about my coach. My high school coach, I played for Reggie Lee, Coach Reginald Lee, Columbus Brookhaven. He was, I don't know, like, I know you're a track and field guy, but like on the side of basketball, like your WNBA player, Helen Darling, Brittany Hunter, one of like the first high school athletes to dunk in the McDonald's All-Star game. We had a really high caliber basketball program. Both on the guy side and the girl side. And my coach, like, I didn't play my senior year. My focus went straight to running after I really like realized like, oh, I'm pretty decent in this. I can't say I was like a state champion, but I'm pretty decent at this. And like my coaching even now, like it's a reflection of my basketball coach, just knowing how he ran practice, just like the structure, like what his expectations were. They were always clear. And like that's a big reflection of who I am today in coaching. And also my brother. My brother actually was my first basketball coach. That was rough because I practice didn't stop when the basketballs got put up. It was, riding home. I had to hear about, things to work on. And, sometimes I just wanted to like sit there and just look out the window. But my brother's actually the person that first told me I was going to run. And as I was running, because I missed a rebound, too many rebounds in practice, I was saying to myself, this man does not know what he's talking about. And my brother is like, every time you miss a rebound today, I'm going to have you run. And he was like, you're going to run so much today, you're going to end up being on somebody's track team. And I was like, no way. I do not like running. And that actually, he was right. I had no clue that I would run. And a lot of it is because of Coach Lee. He, in the spring, we had to either play AAU, play softball, or run track. I had no desire to do either. Well, specifically softball or track. My grandparents couldn't really like afford like doing the AAU circuit. And I had to think about it, like, do I want a ball flying at me or do I possibly want to just run? So I ended up running. And my basketball coach was the track coach at that time too, one of the assistants. So that's how I got into it. And like between my brother and my basketball coach, like that's when I decided I was going to coach a little league team. That was the influence. And when I made mistakes or things went wrong, I thought of like just conversations and things they told me and how they reacted. And it's like a big part of my coaching today.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm actually very glad that you have come from on the high school side, more of a basketball background. One of the things that we've thought about exploring here, I mean, obviously, we're track and field focused first and foremost. And I think, after, 200 plus coaches, we're certainly learning a lot from other track and field coaches. But I think, and it's funny, it came up on Twitter today in a direct message, there is something to learn from other sport coaches,
Yes.
Basketball, swimming, football, etc., basketball, and again, not on the X's and O's. Learning how to run a post route isn't necessarily probably going to help us in track, but the thought process of how you treat kids and how you how you think about your own career, even in a football setting versus basketball, golf coach, etc. So I'm actually quite excited that you kind of come from that background, and also shows that you don't have to have been a track background from the get-go to go on to do stuff in track. Like, oh, it was basketball first, and then I realized I didn't want a softball in my head, so I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna go do track and field. So I really like that. Now, on the other aspect that you talked about with your college coaches, where'd you end up going to school?
Kentucky State University, Frankfort, Kentucky.
Yes, great. Oh man, I love knowing mascot. I almost want to say the Mule Riders. It's not the Mule Riders. What is?
No, not at all. We're the Thoroughbreds.
Thoroughbreds. I knew it was something. Yeah. I knew it was something there. Okay, Thoroughbreds. I love that. Green and black are the school colors, right? Green and yellow. No, I'm
Kelly green and gold.
Green and gold. Okay, I was close enough. I'm gonna count that as a win. But there you talked about the philosophy of coaching the person, not the event. So you talked about Coach Broussard was, listened to you and sometimes did put the ideas into play, and then when he didn't, kind of explained it to you
Right.
about that as well. What impact has that made on you and your coaching career?
It's a major part of it. I I didn't do it at first. I didn't understand how to do it at first, how to like successfully, or not really a from a success standpoint, but how to really have those conversations with student athletes about the why. And so while Marcus, like, he's actually one of my friends because he's also my college teammate. While like that was something that worked for me when I first got into coaching, I didn't understand how to deliver it to the athletes right away.
Mhm, mhm,
And it actually took me started coaching fall 2011. It took me about 2 or 3 more years to successfully understand why and how to do it. And that came from one of my close friends, Antonio Wells. He's down at Winston-Salem.
mhm,
We worked together for 2 years at Kentucky State University. He was actually like my first hire.
mhm,
He had left coaching for a little bit, and I called him up one day, like, hey, my friend, like, we need another coach. We're short a coach, what are you doing? And he was like, I can be there next week. And I was like, what, for real? But working with Antonio gave me the opportunity to really see why. Like, I felt like I had the experiences where sometimes coaches were like, this is what we're doing, and don't ask questions.
mhm, mhm.
And so I kind of took that on, what are we doing today? Oh, we're running, like, and that wasn't necessary, right? So working with Antonio gave me the opportunity to like really see how he executed practice and how he talked through what was on the menu, what practice looked like, why we were doing things. And then we would have conversations, and like he would critique me like, hey, you should add this, or why are we doing this? And
Mhm,
I realized like how important questions were for track and field athletes, and not just for the athlete, but really for the coach, because like sometimes it takes someone to ask you a question and to say, oh, well, that doesn't actually sound right, or maybe I should adjust, or a simple question to an athlete of how are you doing today, because the workout that you have planned for them may not work. So just having that impact from, like, really honestly, Antonio's another coach that I add to the list of how I got into the sport and how I grew in the sport and how I coached the sport now. So
you know, you said a lot of great things, Fatima, and I'm sure for the next 4 hours of this podcast, you're going to say some many other smart things. But you just said something there that was, I think it can be kind of glossed over, but I think it might be one of the most important things that have been said on this podcast. You said, I wrote it down. I learned how important questions were for athletes and coaches. That's really like when you start thinking about a huge coaching education fan and advocate. That to me is what coaching education is and should be. It's
right,
asking questions. It goes back to that skill of curiosity. It's
right,
like, hey, why do you do that? Hey, why don't we do this? Like that to me is a really fascinating aspect of improving as a coach, and not just X's and O's, but the profession of coaching track and field. Hey, why do you take a vacation every week after
right.
national or state meet? Or hey, why do you shut your phone off at 7 o'clock every whatever, things like that. I think that was a really insightful lesson that you learned, and I'm really glad that you learned it kind of early in life as well. I learned how important questions were for athletes and coaches. I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that. I thought that was extremely insightful there. So go back to when you started looking at colleges and you ended up choosing Kentucky State, what was the idea? What did you think your career was going to be? Were you going in to become a nurse, a business owner, a teacher? What did you think was going to be the career?
I started school a a double major in business, marketing and accounting.
Mm-hmm.
And that lasted for all of about a semester. I didn't, of course, my freshman year, I hadn't really got into my core coursework. I mean, well, I was taking my core classes, my math and science and English and all of those things. But then I had already started to really think about, my thing was, oh, I don't want to sit in an office all day, crunch numbers,
I'm sorry.
little,
And you picked business and marketing. Interesting. Okay. All right. Okay.
Right. So like, and I ended up going into education, and I'm so happy that I went into education. And I swear, as I was thinking this morning, I was thinking about my brother randomly while I was walking my dog, my oldest brother Al. I was just thinking about like the impact he's had on my life from coaching to education, because my brother, I was 16 years old and I wanted to go get my own job, and I applied to all these places. And I was actually one of those people that fell into the scheme of like, I'm not sure if you tried it out all or you applied, where I thought I was going to sell knives one summer. I forget what the company is called. But I thought I had landed a secure job, and then I Googled it and I was like, this is a little sketch. I'm not going to do that one. But my brother came home that same night and it was like, I have a job for you for the summer. And I was like, I wanted to do this on my own. But my brother had found a summer camp for his children to attend. And my brother was like, and you're going to work there too. And I was like, what? I only like your kids. I do not really care for kids like that. No, I'm not. And my brother had already like arranged my interview and all of those things. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I get to this interview. I really don't want to be there. And I actually blew the interview panel away. And I really, to this day, I guess it was just because I was myself.
Amen. I was going to point that out. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I blew the interview panel away. I was hired. It was like the best summer of my life. I fell in love with kids, and I still didn't plan to go into education until the middle of that freshman year school year. I ran away from education for a long time. Got out of college, was a preschool educator, but I was also still a volunteer coach at Kentucky State. And somewhere along the line, I was like, I really don't want to teach. I want to coach. And so I worked my way through the program as a volunteer coach to part-time coach, associate head. And when I left Kentucky State, I was the head coach of the program. And I just like, teaching for me was such a benefit, because like just learning classroom management and learning how to navigate different personalities and having good conversations with students, it really impacted my coaching. So I started off, I went to Kentucky State an education major, and I left still a educator by sport, and I really enjoyed it. So
it's amazing to me that we ask 17, 18-year-old kids, like we'd all say they're kids, choose a career for the rest of your life by choosing your major, right? Essentially. Yeah. It still kind of boggles me when I fell into the same and I changed majors, of course, and things like that. But now I look at my two kids, I'm like, man, maybe you don't want to go to college right out the bat. Like, go spend a year doing other things, taste other things, and figure it out. But to commit yourself at 18, right? Like, man, unless you just grew up like your whole life was going to be engineering or teacher or something, like I've always had this passion. But most of us go to school and gosh, we don't even know what shirt we want to wear the next day. How in the world are we picking a major that we're spending a lot of money on too, by the way?
Right.
Well, I love that. And I think, an interesting point you brought up there about that interview, and you didn't want the job, and so you kind of were just you were yourself, and you said you blew them away. And I think that's really an important lesson for all of us as coaches and as head coaches that are interviewing assistant coaches. Like we need to be more real and just be ourselves and let the job fall where it may. Either get the job
Exactly.
or don't get the job. Because if you interview and you act to the head coach how you think the head coach wants you to be, and then you get the job, well, you put on an act. That's not who you are. So you're not
Right.
going to actually be really good at the job, satisfactory wise. The head coach is going to sniff that out pretty soon and be like, well, wait a minute. Boy, you told me you were in the office at 7 a.m. every day, and yet I can't get you in the office till noon, but I expect a 7 a.m. So it's just going to be a bad situation. Whereas if you go in and you're yourself, and you get the job, it's like, oh, that's going to be a really good fit. Or even better, just as good, you don't get the job. Well, good, because that wouldn't have been a good fit for you. You would have been
Exactly.
miserable. Dave Smith, head coach of Oklahoma State, was recently on the podcast, and he talked about doing an interview where he drove in the van with the coach for 8 hours. And I was like, what a great, like, that should be the interview, maybe not 8 hours, but that should be the interview. Like, oh, okay, you're gonna interview to be on my staff. Cool. Let's get in the car and we're gonna go a 3 hour little loop. I mean, you know about you getting real when you're just in the car and stop at the gas station for snacks and like
Right.
it's hard to keep up an act in that situation. So I think that's how all interviews should go for track and field. Okay, so you're at Kentucky State. You finally go into the education side, which was probably the side that you were designed for from the get-go.
Yes.
But we have to find our way. The path is never straight, right? It's up and down and through the hills and the valleys and such. You graduate from Kentucky State. What was the first coaching? You mentioned you went through a really kind of unique process through Kentucky State as a coach. Did it start like the very next year as a volunteer coach, or was there a
Um,
team?
I I walked off the track as an athlete in May, and I hit the ground running probably the next month of like understanding
Mhm.
what the job entailed and what it would look like and how I would balance, working as well. So it was the next month. And fall came, August came, and I was a volunteer coach. So it was a pretty quick process. Um Actually, I have to take some steps back. I hadn't even graduated yet. My I hadn't grad Yeah, I was my eligibility was done, but I still had to student teach.
Mhm.
And so I was still in class on campus, and I was coaching.
Mm.
So
So I'm always curious about that. When you hear of undergrads that get hired as grad assistants, so like you said, in May, you're homeboy or homegirls with the team. And
yeah.
in August, you are now coach.
Yes.
And you can't be the same
Yes.
and how that goes. So how did when August came and you were a volunteer coach, so you're helping out, you're doing things, you're also student teaching, you're walking around campus to go finalize your last few classes.
Yeah.
And Sally, who was, you used to hand the baton to her in May, now you're telling her, well, here's what we need to do for preseason training. How did that transition go for you?
It was rough.
Hmm.
Um I feel like because I was still a student, I wanted to still do all of the student things, but I recognized that I was in a different boat of leadership. And so I tapered off. Like I still hung out with my teammates, but it hanging out looked different. We still did like our family meals, and of course I was with them outside of class and outside of studying, which ended up being like not really being able to really be with them. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one of the best things for me, was to have like that distance, because while I was still a student, I wasn't like an employee of the institution.
Mm-hmm.
It just still didn't feel right to live a college life with
Mm-hmm.
college students, even though they were still technically my peers,
Mm-hmm.
because I still had to be a leader. What did help though was the fact that I had been captain I had been captain of my team since my freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
So I already, in their eyes, I already was a leader, and I wouldn't sit here and say I was the perfect leader,
Right.
but I was already their leader, and I just took a different role. and I continued to be there for them, but I like quickly had to make decisions of, hey, we're going here. Are you going? I'm like, no, I cannot go. And that was rough for me, because the team, like, my coach was really big on family, so those were my girls, those were my guys. Like, that's who I spent a majority of my time in college with, created like lifelong friendships. Like my teammates, like their kids are like my god kids, and we were at each other's like graduations and weddings and everything, and it was rough, but it's something I knew I had to do. So I had to slowly distance myself. And in many ways, I was just like really waiting for like a few of my teammates to graduate. Like, come on, hurry up so we can hang out again.
Right. It's a curious part of I don't know enough about the other sports, football, baseball, basketball,
Yeah.
but so I'll just use it as track. It's a curious part of track and field for me where, one day, I always use the example, one night in May, you're playing Xbox on Friday nights with your people, like you said, your family. And
Right.
then in August, you are disciplining them because they were late for practice. Like,
Right.
I honestly think like it, this may be a, unpopular opinion. I almost think like it shouldn't be allowed. I can't
Yeah.
think like if I think about teachers. So if someone graduates high school at 18, they still have to go away for 4 years, even if it's a local school, and
Right.
then come back to teach. They're not teaching. They don't turn around and teach their
Exactly.
peers.
I
I don't
agree.
know. I don't know of any professors that I'm in class with you today, and then in the fall, I'm now your teacher. Maybe a
Teacher.
TA. Maybe I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But it's just always curious to me
Yeah.
about that. So anyway, so with you, Fatima, when you go into a volunteer role, and for you, unique in the sense of like you're still doing your student teaching during this fall semester at least.
Right.
It still allows you to now see the different part of track and field because again, you were an athlete for 4 to 5 years. Now you're seeing things in a different light of like, oh man, I too am upset when the kids aren't on time, but I used to be
Right.
on time myself. And it allows you to get that taste of coaching track and field and easily be able to say, oh, yeah, this isn't for me.
Right.
Or you do it and it's like, oh my goodness, yes, this is what I was put on earth for. What I mean, because you continue to do it, so I have to assume some part of that, the latter example there is true. What parts in that volunteer position were you like, oh man, yeah, this is me, this is what I was put here for?
Um, I think I don't know. I would say it's a mixture. I think the exposure that my head coach allowed me to get very early on, like not so much my first volunteer year because I was still in school, but once I graduated and I got a chance to really like spend more time and travel,
Hmm.
um just being around other coaches like opened my eyes to, oh my gosh, I think I could do this long term. And then when I started to attend conventions and get the chance to really meet people from like every walk of life, Division 1, Division 2, NAIA, that opened my eyes. And then even more when I started to attend a lot of like the like coaching education. So like my first moment to really like step out of my comfort zone and like meet new coaches was when I first did a endurance certification. And that's actually where I met like Althea Thomas. Like we weren't in the same class. She was doing I think like multis or sprints and hurdles, and I was doing endurance, but like being able to see these people and interact and be in class with them. I'm at a small division to institution. And at that time, I believe Althea was at UK. And she was like just down the road. I think she was like transitioning to LSU at that time. When she was there, but to like interact with these people and like see like the different levels of the journey. That was really big for me. And being able to just see like what it took and like just understand like I don't know like how my journey, just get a picture of how my journey could look like and who I needed to have in my corner and who I needed to talk to. And that was big for me. Even now, like I miss college athletics, but like still having a lot of those people in my corner, checking in, being able to reach out, like that's been good for me because working in high school athletics, it's a different monster. And it's actually taught me so much that I didn't think it would teach me. I value it a lot. And I actually, funny story, I remember you saying earlier, like, ooh, thank you for doing that when I coached 5-year-olds. I didn't do it this year, but my first 2 years living in Vermont, actually worked with a summer track club. K through 8th grade. We're really K through 9 kids going into high school, and you want to see like where your coaching education is, and if you can apply those skills, go teach little 4 and 5-year-olds how to run.
We will lose so many coaches if that ever became a requirement. We would
Oh
train
my
so many
goodness.
accountants and business owners. It was like, nah, I'm good.
Ooh, it was interesting but so fun. And I don't know, the journey's been amazing.
Well,
Just
let's
I've
keep
worked
going
at
that
every
journey.
level.
Yeah, let's keep going that journey because it's interesting. If I heard you right, you went from
Yeah.
volunteer coach to assistant coach to head coach at Kentucky State.
Hmm.
How did that transition? So talk to us about the volunteer coach to assistant coach to more full-time.
Well, I mean, a big part of it was funding. My program didn't have a lot of resources. So when I first talked about coaching, my coach was like, "Hey, I really don't have any money like to take care of school or anything, but if you would like to come out here in a volunteer capacity, it's fine." And honestly, I hadn't even thought about it. Honestly, like I was so new to it, I didn't really know those kind of
Mhm.
opportunities really existed, and it wasn't a thought. So started off a volunteer, um, transitioned into like a part-time assistant. I guess it was like 2 years in or a year and a half in. Maybe it was my second year. I'll have to actually pull my resume. I really don't remember. I just know I went volunteer,
Were you teaching?
part-time.
Were you teaching during the volunteer?
Um, my first year I was a student teacher.
Mhm.
And then the second year I was a part-time, like super part-time part-time coach, and I was teaching preschool.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then let me see, keep my years together. December 2013, and this started fall 2011. December 2013, I actually moved from a part-time coach role into the associate head cross country coach, assistant coach position. I stayed in that role for from 2013 to July of 2015 as a full-time
Mhm.
coach.
Mhm.
The only reason I changed at that capacity was because we had this really crazy budget cut at my university, and all of our assistant coaches were made part-time.
Mhm.
And I had to like make a really big decision because financially it wasn't something that I felt like I could navigate, but I loved coaching so much. And my head coach was actually laid off, and we had like a program that was just looking like, what do we do next? So I
Mhm.
stayed around. I just picked up I picked up a additional job. I already worked like a little part-time job. I picked up one more job. I stayed around, and I had the opportunity in like 2016 to step into a role within athletics where I was working as a compliance officer. So I went back full time.
Hmm.
That was crazy trying to navigate 3 seasons and do compliance for all sports. I realized after a year, like, no, I cannot do both.
Yeah.
I also at that point had assumed the role as the interim head coach. So I told them like I cannot do both.
Mhm.
It's just too much for me to be a compliance director, the coach of 6 different teams. It just wasn't feasible. I felt like I wasn't giving as much of my time to my athletic program. And then I had like a personal life. So I just
Yeah.
didn't feel like that was okay. And so I ended up having my interim tag removed. Under we had transitioned through a few athletic directors. She removed that tag, ATN Thomas, and she gave me the opportunity to lead my program. And I'm thankful that she gave me that opportunity because as she was a new athletic director, she could have easily came in and said, "Well, I see you're here holding the seat, but I have someone else that I would like to bring in. See ya." And she didn't do that to me, and I did. I still do. I appreciate the fact that she gave me that chance
Hmm.
to figure it out and build my team. So it was a journey.
You know,
And of course, I was one of those coaches that the pandemic hit
mm,
and more institutional cuts came.
mm,
And I remember being in a meeting and they were like, "Yeah, we're about to make some budget cuts. We're going to take about 50 staff members. We'll cut about 50 staff members." And I had no clue. Like I sat there and I watched the meeting. I had no clue that I would be in that number.
mm.
And I was cut and I was like, whoa. But I see it as a blessing now. It was rough because I had just like recruited the previous year biggest recruiting class
Mhm.
ever, like since I had been there, and I had been a part of the program for 13 years. And biggest recruiting class had a nice team that came in from all over the country. Was really excited. Season got cut short. We were doing some things, and it hit me, and I was like, wow, what do I do next? I feel like I only know coaching. Um, I ended up moving here with my partner a few months later, and
To Vermont.
yeah, to Vermont.
Well,
And
let's pause right there before we go to the
yes.
Vermont side. I know everybody's interested. How does this Ohio, Kentucky girl get to Vermont? Because that's crazy. But I'm curious, Fatima, as I'm listening to that story of your time, over years there at Kentucky State, getting a part-time assistant coaching job, then getting the full-time, adding compliance to your plate, uh, big budget cuts, which I remember that, and getting the head job. There were a lot of areas for you to quit. Like, like,
Yeah,
like there were a lot of times as you're telling that story, I'm like, oh, if she just said, "Hey, I'm done. I'm gonna go find another job," like no one would have blamed you. What kept
right.
you from quitting? You kept fighting for this institution. What kept you fighting there?
Um, there's a lot of there's many things that kept me there. One, it's my alma mater,
Mhm.
and not only is it my alma mater, but it was my grandfather's alma mater. Like I learned about Kentucky State University
Oh,
because of my
wow.
brother. I mean, not my brother, my grandfather.
Wow.
Um, it was like a piece of being like truly a part of my grandfather's legacy. He was a football athlete. I actually found out right before I left Kentucky State University that he was actually on the track team. And I had this joke with my brother, like, why do you think he didn't tell us? Was he not that good of a track guy? Or, you
He's like, it's
know?
better you don't know that part of the legacy.
Exactly. Um, but one, it was my alma mater. And I just since I arrived to that campus for my visit, like I've like just breathes Kentucky State,
Yeah.
just part of me. I built so many friendships, and it was such a environment for me to just mature and find out like really who I am. And so I felt like I could never give back to Kentucky State what Kentucky State gave to me, which
Mm,
was like being the youngest of my siblings. It gave me like younger siblings in a sense.
mm,
Have a big family, but having that second family, it paved the way for my career. So
yeah, I love that.
as things were going wrong, and at times it felt like the ship was sinking, I still have my loyalty to the university. What everyone else didn't see, the brilliance of my historically Black college, and despite like budget cuts and different issues that arrive at universities, I still saw how amazing of a place it was.
Mhm.
And that's how I was able to recruit kids and not really have a big scholarship budget and not really have a lot to offer except for the fact that I let parents and kids know that I was going to love on their kids. I would make sure that to the best of my ability, they weren't just going to come run for me, but they were going to graduate, and we would make sure they were pursuing careers, that fit for them. Um, I knew that it was important, not just to me and not just to our alumni, but it was just like Kentucky State's an important part of Black history and Black education. It's paved the way, just like many historically Black colleges have. And so it was important for me to make sure that I continue to help the program build, and or really grow. And so I stayed. Like, my coach was let go 2015. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I knew that they were going to hire a new coach. I knew that coach wouldn't be me.
Mm,
I didn't know if I had a job. I sat in a meeting with our assistant athletic director at that time as he was transitioning into a role of the AD. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm bringing in Tori Edwards." And I was like, "What?" "You're bringing in Tori Edwards to be the head coach?" And I was like, "Are you serious?" He was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "I love that idea." Like, I get to learn from Tori Edwards. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm bringing in Tori Edwards. We're going to try to like really put this program, like just elevate it." And just the time working with Tori Edwards was it was amazing, because
mm,
I never had like the experience of working under a female head coach.
mhm,
I had one female coach, two, my entire athletic career, one in high school, one in college, and the one in college was also like my head coach was big on bringing in former student athletes. So it was my teammate as well. Um, but I had never worked under a woman in leadership in track and field.
mhm,
So that experience by itself was amazing. She taught me so much how to just navigate um our program while it was a small division 2, but to treat it like it was a division 1
mm,
program.
mm.
And many great things came from that.
Let's stay on that
So
topic. Let's stay on that topic
sure.
for a second. First, a quick comment. The way you were describing that about Kentucky State is real interesting. I felt like I could have asked you to define why you stayed with your family, because the answers were very similar, right? You talked about like, hey,
Right.
it wasn't perfect. There was some ugliness, there was some
Yeah.
heartache, etc. But we stayed together. I mean, that's a family, right? Like the
Right.
family isn't perfect, mom, dad, brothers, sisters, uncles, but we stay together through
Hmm.
the proverbial thick and thin. And that's how you describe that was really special. Someone who my alma mater, Troy University in Alabama. My son's name is Troy. I mean, that's how important that university is to me. Um,
Yeah.
I have a lot of empathy for the way you described that's the school for
Yeah.
you. Like that really that was special. Now you mentioned working under Tori Edwards, and you never had worked with a female in leadership for track and field. I'm always love to explore those kind of topics to help the coaching profession continue to move forward. Can you help us understand, for your experience, why was that important for you?
It was it was important because just like, people say, sometimes you need to see other people in a role. Um, that's how it was for me. And it wasn't like I didn't see other women that were head coaches. I saw women that were in that role, but to actually work with a woman
Mm,
and understand how a woman in that role could navigate um just being one of the only women in a space. Like
mm,
working in an athletic department, a lot of times it's predominantly male, and to see a woman navigate and not take any mess from anyone was what I needed before I could really step into a role as a head coach.
mm,
I'm so happy that my university was like, "Oh, put Fatima in a row." I'm so happy, like, because, like, I needed to work with Tori Edwards. Like, I needed to see, and the awesome thing about it was actually her first time ever being a head coach.
mm,
Like, she had worked, she had been, like, a volunteer at UK. She, worked in, like, a several different roles as assistant coach, volunteer coach, but this was her first time too, and it was like we were in many ways doing this together. For me, it was like my first time working under a woman, um, and understanding like the way she thought and how I didn't see as clear as she did. And then it was her first time being in a leadership role where it was like this big, great expectation because she was Tori Edwards.
right.
And it was like, and she just showed me so much of her humanity as she navigated that role. Like just like fighting for our team and making sure we had the things that we needed. And it was like, I had worked with so many people that were alum of our program. And you have a different alum, like you say, you're a Troy um alum, and you have a level of love when it's home, right? But for her to not have any tie to our university, she wasn't an HBCU graduate, no tie to Kentucky State University. The love that I saw her give our student athletes, the love she put into the work she did, it was amazing. And I really needed her. Like I needed to see a woman do that job, and I'm so happy to just watch her navigate through the highs and lows. And we were able to have conversations about when there were lows and understanding how she felt about it and
Mm,
what could be changed and what we needed to do. And I'm thankful. Like there's so many people to thank in my coaching journey, but that was the first woman I worked with, first female coach. And just to see just what she did in her time at the university, I will never forget it.
yeah.
Like it's like a core memory for me of being able to have that. Like I went from watching the woman on TV as a kid to working with her, and it blew me away.
Yeah, yeah. I think representation matters, and I'm
Yeah,
amazed, and specifically in our sport, um, the amount of African Americans who participate in the sport as related to the amount of African Americans who coach the sport. That is extremely disproportionate, and
right,
the same with the female participation to the female coaching.
right,
And there are certainly, I appreciate the societal, what's the word, pressures, maybe, I'm not sure if that's the right word, towards women in society, as far as caregivers and mothers, and how that relates to work. But man, I see lots of women in the professional sector, in the business owner sector, et cetera, that are navigating it. And so what that makes me feel like we can navigate womanhood and motherhood as a professional track and or as a professional track and field coach, meaning high school or college uh,
right.
track coaching. but we it feels like we have to do coaching differently though to do that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like actually, I say that as a good thing. Like I'm not real keen on how we do coaching. I'm not sure it's real healthy with our 24/7, 365-day a year attitude towards the profession of coaching. I'm not sure that's real healthy, and it certainly seems to be not healthy for keeping women in our profession, whether they go through motherhood or not, but just keeping them in our profession at all. It does not seem very congruent to accomplishing that goal for sure. So, so I always love when when we have women on the podcast, or we have people who work for women. It's like, hey, what impact did that make? Because I've never yet have never had anybody say, no impact. If it was a dude or if it was a girl, it didn't matter to me. And it was like, no, there's something different. It's special. Unfortunately, it's special. And what I mean by that is because it is still so rare. So when we do see a woman in a leadership role in our sport, it's like, whoa. It's like, man, I wish that was just commonplace, roughly. Okay, so we're at that point. Thank you for sharing that, Fatima. And honestly, it says something about your character there. When they go out and hire someone else, and I know that someone else in this specific case was Tori Edwards, and she has a lot of athletic background that boy, I'd be jealous. I'd love to have half of her athletic accolades. But it says a lot about your character for someone, and again, your love for the university. I think a lot of people would have been like turned off. Like, wait a minute, you're passing me up for her. She hasn't done anything. I don't care that she's done this many teams and ran this fast, whatever, blah, blah. But instead, you took that as like, all right, well, first of all, I love this university. I love this program. And it sounded like you were kind of had the posture of like, well, I'm going to learn from it. And we're going to learn together as you two were both navigating that. So I think that shows a lot about the positivity of your character there, which I think says a lot about you. Okay. But now we're at that point, we're trying to figure out, okay, you obviously have this great love for Kentucky State, but you're in Vermont. All right. So talk to us. How did we transition up to Vermont? Why did we go up there? And what are we doing up there?
I'm trying to think. In August, I've lived here for 3 years. I actually live in New Hampshire.
Uh-huh.
It's like almost I'm sure you've been to Louisville and maybe New Albany, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as far as like that border and the
Some
water.
imaginary line they put on a map.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. It's like you cross the street, you're in Lebanon, or you're in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
You cross the street again, you're in Vermont. You cross the
Yep.
river, all those things.
Yep.
But I actually moved here August 2020 in the middle of the pandemic with my partner. My partner is a postdoctoral research scientist at Dartmouth College.
Whoa.
So,
Man.
so we did relocate here August 2020. When I relocated, I was, I guess, at that point, 2 months since I had left Kentucky State University. I had no idea of what was next at that time. I knew I had to get a job,
Right, yeah.
but I wasn't sure of what. And I just started looking at, what that would look like for me. I was not ready to stop coaching. So I ended up I started looking for jobs, and it's funny, I had 3 job offers in 1 week. Actually 4. An interview I actually forgot about because I was so overwhelmed with the amount of interviews. It was like no callback, no callback. And then I started getting like phone calls and interviews. At
What's that
that
saying?
time,
When it rains, it pours. It's like
it does,
everybody's
yeah.
coming in.
It
Yeah.
was a good rain, right?
Yeah. Right.
Summer rain. But and this was January actually. Like I had been up here just kind of trying to navigate pandemic and figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
This
Tough
was
time to find a
January.
job. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes, and a job that I wanted to do. And like I'm a, former student athlete. I still needed some kind of fulfillment out of the deal,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I ended up having the opportunity between being a insurance agent and a teacher. and it was a long-term sub position
Mm.
that I had applied for. And I had went on an interview with the insurance agency, got offered the job, did the interview with the high school. I was offered the job, and I was thinking about like the commute. And again, I'm in Vermont. At that time I'm living in Vermont, New Hampshire, border town and all that, or border state. Um, and I was like, I don't know if I really want to drive to my job. My job was going to be 30 minutes away. Now let's go back to Kentucky State. I was driving every day to work from Lexington to Frankfort, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Rain, sleet, snow, whatever. But rain, sleet, and snow in Kentucky and rain, sleet, and snow in the Upper Valley in the Northeast are two different things.
Oh, yeah.
Polar opposites. Emphasis on
I
polar,
think
right?
I think bold polar in that, by the way.
Yes, very bold. So when I went to my interview for the insurance agency, we had just had a really big snowstorm. And my partner and I at the time, we were actually excited for the storm. It was our first big snow. I know that didn't last long. First big snow. It snowed I want to say like 20 inches in maybe 6 hours. Yeah, I see your face. Yeah.
Oh.
So the first time it snowed, we're like, the meme with like SpongeBob and Patrick and Squidward, where Squidward's like staring out the window at, the two of them frolicking. That
Yes.
was our neighbors as my partner and I frolicked outside at 5 a.m. playing in the snow until we
What are
realized,
wrong with these people?
yeah, what's wrong with them? We're from the Midwest. That's why. Um, but when I went to do my interview, they were like, yeah, by the way, that snowstorm, we actually got 26 inches. And I'm like blankly staring at like the 30-minute travel that I made and how they
Mhm.
were 6 inches. It was 6 inches more. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So
The
that was one
brain
of the
started
biggest
spinning,
reasons.
huh? It's like,
Yes, that's one
oh,
of the
wait a
biggest reasons
minute.
I did not accept that job. I accepted the job at the high school teaching biology, space and science, had a blast. Had the job for a few months. Teacher came back from maternity leave. I went in as a full-time sub.
Mhm.
And so in that moment, about I guess a month into subbing, had a brief conversation with the athletic director about sports. And I was like, yeah, I used to coach. And I was like, I'll send you my resume if you guys have any opportunities. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he sees my resume and he's like, okay.
He's like, oh, you
So I ended up working with
coached.
the program. He's like, you coach. And I'm like, yeah. So I joined the program. Um and it was different. I had no clue of what I was getting into. Just being able to take a majority of the team, they enjoyed being out there, but they weren't out there really to, I don't know, they weren't really looking, they didn't care if they won or if they won a title or anything. They just really enjoyed it.
Mhm.
And I didn't understand that feeling, honestly. I
Sure.
didn't understand that
Mhm.
right away. Like, like I want to win, I want to like have some fun while doing it. I do understand the fun, but I didn't understand that. And then I started to see why, like, like these kids, like they're out here with their friends. It's just like almost like, I wouldn't say a club team, but they're
Mhm.
just enjoying it. And
In fact, that's what I was thinking. It was a club. Like plenty of people
yeah,
join the chess club or the debate club
yeah,
and don't have any, like, I don't want to become a grandmaster, but I enjoy
yeah,
the event and I enjoy the people in that event. And so just
right,
change that to the track team or the
exactly.
football team.
Yeah.
Right. Mhm.
And so my time there, I discovered the reason why people weren't really that into it is because like lacrosse is big here and
Mhm.
baseball.
Yep.
And so people didn't really necessarily care about track and field that much.
Right.
And then my first season with the program, we ended up breaking the school record in the 4x8. And we started to build on some momentum. Like the program had some stellar athletes over the years, and but over time, like with lacrosse being one of the major sports, more students were really interested in doing that.
Mhm.
And just having the opportunity to like show kids like we can do this, like let's keep doing it, let's keep trying it. um I actually ended up recruiting like almost every kid I taught that first year
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
And by at the latest their senior year, which all of those kids graduated last weekend, they had all ended up joining. Like at least 50% of the kids I had in class had joined. But just like seeing the love for the sport to grow, because
Yeah.
again, like lacrosse, baseball, that's the go-to. So that following fall after my first year, I actually took over the cross country program as the head coach, and for track and field assistant coach. um First year, coach had been like some transitions of coaches over the years, and I just pretty much asked the kids to like just run with me, just trust me. And first year, we now the girls team had previously already won the conference title. Had lost a few athletes, but those kids, because I had a few of them for track and field, there was already like some trust in, some buy-in. And like I think having those kids in the spring allowed them to say, hey, coach is
Mhm.
gonna give her all, she's gonna come put the work in with you guys, and it's gonna not gonna lead you astray. And we ended up on both sides, which like was the first time in school history we won our conference title for the boys and girls for cross country. And so that was like the beginning. And then I started, it was my second year this past year, coaching our track and field program for the summer. We won state. Um, and like my whole reason for coaching that program was like to like build that love for track and field. Like lacrosse popular is growing, but to like show kids there's other sports, which, you know, I feel like track and field is a sport for everyone. You know, you
Amen.
can,
Absolutely.
anyone can do track. It doesn't mean you're going to be the greatest,
That's right.
but you can find your greatness. Like you can literally find the event that fits you, that you can work at, that you can get better at. So I just like every year I've just been trying to add to the program. I don't really consider myself like, I don't know, I know I'm a part of the winning. But like I think the biggest part of the winning is the student athletes. Like they're really putting in everything they can. They're showing up. And I think the result of that was last spring 2022 season, our boys, they got third. It was like their highest finish in years for the outdoor season. And then we rolled around into the indoor season and we won state. And it's like the continued buy-in, it's the continued like, let me bring my friend out here and try and see what they can do. And it's just amazing to see it grow. Like the conversations of, okay, this is what I'm gonna try next year, or,
Mm.
you know, I really like this coach. What else can I do? Like it's great to see, because track and field in the Northeast is in Vermont, really, like it's more so like I feel like student athletes are more so into the distance events,
Mm.
which is fine. Um, but it's amazing to see the program grow at Hartford, and it's growing elsewhere. And we have some beautiful or high caliber programs in the state of Vermont that, you know, those kids love it. And despite the fact that, you know, some of these other spring sports or even winter sports, because we do have winter track and field, indoor track, even though like people are pushing over to basketball and a lot of those team sports, like people still have a love for this sport. And I love it because like when I arrived to Vermont and started working with the team. We had a decent sized team, but now we're about a few kids shy of needing a second bus. So yeah,
Wow.
that's where we are. So
Healthy things grow. I love
yeah,
that. You know,
it's exciting. I think
I
a big part of it is like my athletic director is a product of the program. He graduated. I won't put his age out there, but he graduated a while back. He he loves it, and he doesn't. It's not just his love for track and field, but he just loves athletics, and that's why I think we click so well because of how he thinks about student athlete welfare, like how he thinks about the needs of a student athlete outside of just, oh, I want to win. Oh, you need like that mental health aspect. You need like someone in as your strength and conditioning coach. And we have all of those things. And I didn't know high school programs could have so much. And that's a big part of like why our programs are successful and they're continuing to grow, and not just track and field, but also our lacrosse program just won state 2 weeks ago. Our girls won last year, and it's just, I don't know, Hartford's just doing something right.
yeah,
And a
love it.
lot of that right is making sure that kids are not just from I guess a win, but making sure they're winning in the classroom and winning from a mental health aspect. So
You know, I love to dispel myths. And one of the myths that we talk about frequently here is that a high school coach can't coach college, which is super interesting to me because a lot of our guests, the college coaches, started out as high school coaches. So I don't
right.
understand how we have this myth, and yet the majority, I won't say the majority, a lot of coaches have come from the high school level. Two that kind of come to my mind, one from your neck of the woods, a young man named Mike Holloway, also known as Mouse. He
Yes,
coached high school before he coached Florida, and
yes.
then just recently, now new women's head coach at University of Arkansas, Chris Johnson, also started as a high school coach. I just,
Yes.
so this is fascinating to me because I think this might be you might be our first college coach who went to high school. What I'm
Mhm.
interested in, knowing that we don't talk X's and O's, we can assume that some differences between coaching college going to high school is the amount of training and maybe the level of training, because you're dealing with younger training age kids. So
Right.
you just maybe assume that part. But what else have you seen that you've had to adjust? Maybe more philosophy or how you treat or talk to the kids or alumni and parents support. I don't know. What are some of the things that you've noticed you've had to do? Not lower, like I'm not painting the picture of college is here and high school is down here. I'm just saying there are differences. What have you noticed that you've had to do differently from your college coaching experience to now your high school coaching experience?
Um, I don't know if I want to say this is going to sound weird or if people won't believe me, but I honestly haven't changed anything.
Hmm.
Like, now as far as like a training aspect, workouts, like volume maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as like who I show up as
Mm-hmm.
every day, I haven't really adjusted that
Yeah.
because, like, for instance, as a college coach, now I had many times where I was the only paid coach, and I had a coaching a staff that was volunteers and GAs and part-time and no time and managers, right? But no matter what, and no matter how loaded my schedule was, I tried to always make sure I showed up for my student athletes, and not just a show up of, oh, making sure I'm at your event, at the meet. But no, excuse me for a second. Allergies are kicking my butt up here. Um, I made sure I showed up for student athletes outside of the sport, student athletes, like, I'm very like big on the holistic student athlete, and
Tell us what
to
you mean
really
by that.
acknowledge,
That's
huh?
a fun word to say. Tell us what that means to you when you say the holistic coaching.
For me, like literally to navigate, like as I navigate in myself, I'm not just a teacher and a coach. Like I am someone who likes to hike and I like to read and I like to travel. And like some of those things like get more time than others. And sometimes, I don't get to do things I want to, or um just like I can't show up as the same person. And in coaching, I want my student athletes to be able to show up as who they are.
Mm,
And I want them to not just focus on, like when we talk about the X's and O's in athletics, right?
mhm,
I don't want them to just focus on being an athlete. Like for college athletes, high school athletes, K through 8, they're student athletes. And part of being that student isn't just the academic side. In order to be a student, while you do spend a majority of your day in classes and doing homework, like there's other things that are involved. Like I have student athletes from previous experience at the collegiate level to now at high school that are actors and actresses. They're in plays. Um, they enjoy like going on family vacations. They're involved in things that are outside of my sport.
mm.
And I've seen, and I won't like really put it on a specific sport, but as an administrator, and just being a coach, I've seen where like that time that kids have outside of the sport, it's not respected.
Mm,
And I don't just see that in sport. I see that in people's careers. Like people get
yeah,
um they have employers that don't respect their time. And if
yeah.
I'm gonna believe in a person to be themselves and be authentically them, then I have to respect that what I want of them isn't 24/7. While we talk about people like having the opportunity to be like these lifelong learners, and like I need time to process the why, and what's happening in my classroom and what's happening on the track. And my time to process is being away from it. So I recognize that with my student athletes, like, and so I like to show up for them. I guess that's like a long story getting to it. um I show
Wonderful.
up for them outside of the sport. If they have a band concert, I'm there. If they are presenting their artwork, I'm there. Like I'm showing up for you because you show up for me, whether it's an hour or 2 hours out of your day, you show up and give me 100%. So even if I can't show up to all of your events, every event, I want to show up for you when I can. And I want you to see that I value your time and who you are outside of the sport. Um, and so for me, it's always been like that. And I haven't changed. Like as a college coach, I had kids they're like, Coach, come to my play. Coach, I'm running for this office
Mhm.
position. Can you help me, coach? Can you just show up? Sure. Sure, I'll be there. And I feel like I navigate life like that. Like, you get tired as a coach and a teacher or whatever you're doing, but like I try to just show up for people. And I think that's important for your student athletes, for the people you love, for your friends. Like you just show up, and they don't know you're tired as all get out, or you have like some paperwork you need to get done. You just like, I guess that's really part of being an adult. You have to figure out the balance and how to get it done. But um that's what hasn't changed for me. Like I haven't stopped showing up. I haven't stopped believing in student athletes as people that deserve more than me to think that I should fill their day with my sport. Um, I haven't stopped thinking about how the impact of a environment that's centered around family values, that's still the same. Like I believe in having parents and grandmothers and cousins a part of the program and inviting them to events, and making sure they know I value them. And the other thing that I haven't changed is I make sure like my partner's been with me. I've been with my partner for the last 5 years. Um, I make sure that I'm bouncing like my ideas and my thoughts off of her, because if anybody's gonna tell me like, no, babe, that doesn't sound right, that's who's gonna give it to me. That's who's gonna like tell me like, yeah, you could adjust that. Maybe you shouldn't say that. Have you thought about it this way? Because like I need feedback from all angles. And that's something I heard you say earlier about, you know, sometimes people get caught up in just their sport. But for me, like I have my people that I love in track and field, the coaches that I value. I like absorb everything they say and I process it. But I also really like have several basketball coaches. I love to like see what they're doing and what they're saying, how they're treating their student athletes. I like to look at people outside of the profession, like, you know, like my partner's a scientist. I like to look at track and field and teaching the way she looks at her science. And when like I find myself in a room with like her science buddies, like I'm taking it in. Sometimes I'm not understanding. Like sometimes it's like I'm still back 2 equations ago, but I'm coming shortly. But like but like I like to like absorb what's around me, because I feel like everything can benefit my student athletes. And so I haven't changed anything. I've changed the volume. And that's it. I've changed volume. Like I even like I'll tell a kid like, hey, I used to do this with my college age athletes, but don't worry, the times are different, the volume is different. I want to see how your body reacts. Or, I used to do this, but guess what? We're not doing that. I learned that's not the best practice. So
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think I've changed.
Some real important things you said there were about identity,
Yeah.
and you talked a little bit about both the athlete's identity of, track and only track, and I can't do other
Right.
sports and things like that. And then you spoke about the role of identity in us as a coach. And I think that's so important, what you said there about, the role of I think of it as like if I were to say, Fatimah, write down the top 10 roles you play. You're a daughter, you're a partner, you're a coach. I'm certainly you're a best friend. I mean, there's roles that you had. You said you like hiking. You're a hiker. That's a role. And
Right.
when I talk with coaches around the country about their role of coaching, what I see in a lot of instances is that we put coaching as number one. And we forget that there are some really much more important roles: spouse, father, mother, son, daughter, etc., where you sit with your faith, etc., that are way more important than coach. But in society, because it's sport, and in our niche of track and field, we put in, and I think this is a positive, we put coaching as this pedestal, and I'm with that. But we got to understand that there are higher pedestals there as well. So to understand that, yeah, we love track, and boy, we want to talk it 24/7, and we want our athletes to be so dedicated and focused. But to your point, these kids are they have hobbies of the chess club, and they want to become scientists, and they enjoy spending time with their little sister or whatever. There's a million things, and that is not only is that okay, but man, that's really important.
Right.
Really important, rounding out who you are as an individual. So I think you said some really fantastic things there. And I like to hear, I'm actually very happy the way you answered the question of what do you do differently as a college coach versus a high school coach, because it's interesting. You're very unique of that twist of like you came from the high school side and went to high school, where usually it's the reverse. And again, I told you, I like to bust these myths. So like, I think you really strengthened my argument, if you will, of that there's not much of a difference. There is 100% difference in training age when we talk about volumes and things like that. Absolutely. And maybe there is difference in, okay, if you're in college on a team, and specifically maybe if you're on scholarship, okay, there are some things you're going to have to make sacrifices for because it's your job. You're
Right.
getting paid, that kind of thing. Where in high school, it's like, man, you may have to miss a day because you got to go to band practice. I don't know. I mean, I'm
Right.
not paying you to be on the high school track team, so it's hard for me to say no, in that instance. Um, but I like that there was like, oh yeah, no, I still, it actually kind of goes back to Coach Broussard's lesson of, what I heard you described. You didn't say these words, but you kept describing. You've continued to coach the person, not the event. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to learn about these people. Someday they're going to come to practice and they're going to be high, and boy, we're going to have the greatest practice in the world. And sometimes some bad things happen. They're just low. And so, because I know them as a person, I know we're going to have to expect something maybe a little differently
Right.
from them at practice. So I love this uniqueness of college to high school because it strengthens my resolve that a high school coach 100% can be successful coaching college, and reverse is true as well, that a college coach, like I always like to pick on my buddy Mouse. Take Mouse and take him back to Columbus and Brookhaven High School. It's like, man, do you think he'd be successful? I think so. And I think most people would say yes because, oh, well, he knows how to coach. I don't think that. I think that has something to do with it. I think more of, though, oh, Mouse knows how to relate to people.
Yes.
That's why he would be successful, not because he knows the X's and O's maybe better than the majority of us.
Yes.
He knows how to deal with people and young people. That is why he would be successful at Brookhaven High School, my old high school, this college, that college, professionally, etc. That's why he's successful. And there's many, many other examples like that in the high school and college side of things, man. I really do.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I'm gonna prepare you, Mike, because Coach Mouse might get on you because he's a Lyndon McKinley alum. So just be ready.
I just said Brookhaven because you mentioned Brookhaven. Yeah, I knew he was Columbus. I can never remember what high school.
Yeah, but you're right. Brookhaven was my high school.
Right,
But
right,
I know
That's
he's
why
a
I used
Lyndon McKinley
Brookhaven.
alum.
That's right. Yeah. I'll ask for grace that I didn't remember what high school he went to.
I don't think he would. I don't think he would be upset.
He's okay to
Lyndon
get
McKinley
upset.
was supposed to be actually my home. That was my home high school, but I went to Brookhaven.
Oh, nice. I love it. I love it. Well, Fatimah, wrap us up here today. Again, super love your journey. I mean, and what's really cool about your journey is it's always tough with the podcast because we have to wrap up the podcast at some point, right? So there's an ending here. But the cool part is your journey is not ending. You're still, to use a track analogy, maybe you're at the 200-meter mark of a 400-meter race. Maybe
Right.
you still got many, many years ahead of you, whether it continues in the high school setting or college setting, or maybe not in track and field at all. You're very multi-talented here.
Right.
So that's the really cool part is like the journey continues. The positive impact that you make on young kids continues even today. And so I just love that for you and love that for the kids that you get to impact on a daily basis.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So what goes on from here? Your partner is in a doctorate program, which I'm from Alabama. I can't.
I know she's postdoctoral.
What
Yeah.
does that mean? Does that mean she already has her PhD?
Yes, she already has her doctorate. She got it in the middle of the pandemic. She finished in the middle of the pandemic. So yes, so she's doing her research.
Okay. Will she go on to teach somewhere? Like, is there a possibility maybe you go a little warmer?
We are she will be on the market pretty soon. In many ways already on the market. So she'll be out there. I can't really
Sure.
talk too much on like where we're thinking, but she is, I mean, she does science well. Like that's my
what a
that's my
no
hero.
one has ever said that on the podcast. They do science well.
She does science well. Like she's the Coach Holloway of science. I feel like,
Wow. Hey, that's a high.
and I'm not just saying that because she's my partner. She's amazing. So yeah, she does science well. Like she's amazing though.
Very cool. Well, Fatimah, again, thank you so much. Lots of laughs today, lots of I mean, again, just your story, your journey of the love of Kentucky State and how that showed up and how it shows up today with what you do with young kids there in Hartford, Vermont. I mean, it's quite amazing. I'm really so like proud of you. There are many times in your story where I was like, oh, she could quit here and no one would have been like, oh, why'd she quit? Like, oh, it's understandable. You also could have felt sorry for yourself, a lot of self-pity, like, oh, I was a college coach. I can't go down, air quotes there, to coach high schoolers. Instead, it sounds like every step of the way when a new challenge was presented, you faced it head on and made it the absolute best that you could, and your support team, friends and family, etc., that could be with you for that. And so I'm really just proud of you, Fatimah. Honestly, man,
Thank
young
you.
people have benefited from that attitude instead of being held back from that attitude. So it's really, really awesome. I think your journey today is going to really help a lot of people that listen to it and understand, like, wow, man, boy, if Fatimah can do it, I surely can do this, and have a much better attitude.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here today, Fatimah. You certainly win the award for the most unique name, and I love that.
Thank you.
There's enough Mikes and Davids in the world, so I'm always encouraging much more interesting names. So I love that, and I love your journey, and I'm just again so grateful that you would join us here on the podcast this week.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and this was exciting. This was fun.
Awesome. I'm glad to
Thank you
hear.
for inviting me.
Absolutely. And thank you for being here and listening. We've dropped a lot of podcast alums in this episode as well. So again, I'm going to encourage you, our official historian over here now is encouraging you as well. Go back, look at the backlog, go find a coach, much like Fatimah, that will challenge you and encourage you. That is the real value from this podcast, is finding people that you can be encouraged by their story, and the ones that are going to challenge you. If you're one of the coaches out there that think maybe you're a college coach and you think, I can't hire a high school coach, or I hear this the equal amount of times, I'm a high school coach, I can't coach college, that's not my level. I challenge you, and there's plenty of past guests, just like Fatimah here, that will prove you wrong, because coaching is coaching, and it's more about the person than it is the event. That was a pretty good hot take. We need to make sure people hear that right there. All right. Thank you again for being here this week. Come back next week. We'll do it all over again. Have a great week, everybody.